At 10 minutes to 3 in the morning, when the world is clamped in its darkness, all things seem held in breathless suspension. There is no sound. Not even the birds are stirring. High in the pine forest of Southern California, the night is so complete that even a silver confection of starlight scattered in pale facsimile among the upper branches of the trees is blocked entirely from reaching the feathery spaces beneath. When I stepped from the house and breathed in the odd chill of this July night, I felt a moment of displacement, like a small intruder upon the deep serenity. It was as though I had strayed without permission into some dark museum filled with unseen objects and ambiguous promise. I couldn't decide whether I was the first thing to appear in the new day or a lingering remnant of the day before. In the near absolute dark, I groped carefully toward the top of the steps leading down to the driveway. The car was waiting there below, though hidden by the grainy night. I could smell it. The exposed engine with its fuel and lubricants, and the rubber of the tires nudged at the familiar perfume of pine sap and evergreens. With each step, the yellow opened frame of the welded roll cage and the reflective glass of the headlights began to mark it out in tiny permissions of light, like the skeleton of some imponderable engineering phenomenon. I approached to find everything was as it had been packed the evening before. Spare gear, bungees, tools, fire extinguisher, water bottles on lanyards to keep them from blowing away, first aid kit, a shackled ditty bag I could access one-handed, and a map case, also tied off to the car. The allegedly waterproof duffel bag containing my clothes stood on end, lashed to the passenger seat, with the rubberized bottom faced forward into the wind as an extra precaution against the ram effect of rain penetration, and into this I stuffed a few last-minute personal items, then zipped it closed. I worried that the sound of the engine would shatter the stillness. Startled birds were going to explode in raucous alarm from the trees, and at this hour the noise would wake the neighbors. So I left the ignition to the last minute, while I pulled on a light leather jacket and twisted a pair of soft plugs into each ear. A small onboard pen light served to check all knots and to set the dashboard altimeter to 6,000 feet, and then a tight-fitting cap with a narrow brim would serve to shade my eyes when the sun came up in a few hours, and to keep the grasp of the wind from the remnants of my hair. In a few hours I would be driving directly into its pitiless glare. I adjusted all 5 rear-view mirrors, checked the turn signals and brake lights, noting by the colored reflections on the trees that all were functioning properly. I flipped the headlights on, checked upper and lower beams, then turned them off. All appeared ready for the 3,500 miles or so to Wilmington, North Carolina, the rough equivalent of driving to Nicaragua, though with good roads and plenty of safe fuel and nice places to stop for the night. At last I pulled on gloves, having learned the hard way that exposed hands on the wheel get very sunburned during the day. As I reviewed the inventory, trying to think of anything unanticipated, my brain began to ooze again a vague wave of doubts about this undertaking. For weeks, people had been free in expressing their belief that I was crazy to try to cross the continent in a dune buggy, that I would be exposing myself to a host of conjectural dangers to life and limb, that I would get too cold, too hot, too bored, thrombosis, religious, and other dire threats to well-being. I responded at first by pointing out that people cross the country all the time, even in the winter, on motorcycles, and that I would be sitting in a comfortable car seat with a hat on, and that none of it required leathering up like a Power Ranger. Soon enough, though, I found the best response was to assume an expression of mingled affability and sadness, and to add a brave little smile of gratitude. Sometimes I tried to throw in an air of tender wistfulness, mixed with a touch of cynicism, which I am told suits me.